Dear students, this is Vandana Pachori, and I'm back again with yet another video on a beautiful poetry, Birches, written by Robert Frost. This is for class 11th and 12th. These are the birch trees, and there are some beautiful lines which are written by Robert Frost. It seems he's longing to climb the birch tree, and this gesture of climbing the tree is compared to something which is associated with our life. There's an extended metaphor. We're going to learn about all these and much more. Let's start reading the poetry. When I see birches bend to left and right across the lines of straighter, darker trees, I like to think some boy's been swinging them. But swinging doesn't bend them down to stay, as ice storms do. Often you must have seen them, loaded with the ice a sunny winter morning after a rain. They click upon them as the breeze rises and turn many-colored as the stalk cracks and grazes their animal. Soon the sun's warmth makes them shed crystal shells, shattering avalanche on the snow crust. Such heaps of broken glass to sweep away. You would think the inner dome of heaven had fallen. They are dragged to the withered bracken, and they seem not to break, though once they are bowed. So low for long, they never right themselves. You may see their trunks arching in the summer wood, in the woods, years afterwards trailing their leaves on the ground like girls on hands and knees that throw their hair before them over their heads to dry in the sun. But I was going to say, when truth broke in with all her matter of fact about the ice storm, I should prefer to have some boy bend them as he went out and in to fetch the cows, some boy too far from town to learn baseball, whose only play was what he found himself, summer or winter, and could play alone. One by one, he subdued his father's trees by riding them down over and over again until he took the stiffness out of them, and not one but hung limb. Not one was left for him to conquer. He learned all there was to learn, but not launching out too soon, and so not carrying the tree away clear to the ground. He always kept his poise to the top branches, climbing carefully with the same pains you used to fill a cup, up to the brim and even above the brim. Then he flung outward, feet first, with a swish, kicking his way down through the air to the ground. So was I once myself a swinger of birches, and so I dream of going back to be. It's when I'm weary of considerations and life is too much like a pathless wood, where your face burns and tickles with the cobwebs broken across it, and one eye is weeping from a twig's having lashed across it open. I would like get away from earth a while and then come back to it and begin over. May no fate wilfully misunderstand me and half grant what I wish and snatch me away, not to return. Earth's the right place for love. I don't know where it's likely to go better. I would like to go by climbing a birch tree and climb black branches up a snow-white trunk towards heaven till the tree could bear no more, but tipped its top and set me down again, That would be good both going and coming back. One could do worse than be a swinger of birches. Let's just see the first stanza. When I see birches bend to left and right across the lines of straighter, darker trees. Now, in these lines, he simply is trying to explain the beauty of these birches, and they are all bent down because of the ice storm. Because of the ice storm, the lower of the ice, which had piled up on its back, it had bent down and it had been fixed there down. There is something almost playful about these birches. Unlike their seemingly serious counterparts, otherwise you would see they would just appear to be standing straight all the time with shoots quite tall up to the sky with not too many branches and not too many flowers. But just look at the seriousness, they are very stiff, it appears to be. But then there is something which is different, unlike their seemingly serious counterparts. Lines of straighter, darker trees, they seem to be, because many of these, they do not conform, they have their own developments in the wilderness. They are scattered, to some are towards the left side, some bend towards the right. There's lines of going towards this side, that side, and they are scattered to left and right. Their odd angles trigger the poet's imagination. And this difference, the difference between, of angle of their bending down, has triggered in him the poet's imagination, and the creativity has brought to life, and he fancies that a boy has been swinging about. He just wonders, he just thinks, he gets fascinated, or like I would like to think, he likes to think about the boys being swinging them. He's fascinated towards this beautiful idea of boy having swung and brought it down. Their odd angles trigger the poet's imagination, and he fancies. There's not this fancy which gets emerged in his mind, and then. But the next line, then he rationalizes. He wants to come to the very practical truth. That is, he believes that, but the swinging doesn't bend them down to stay, as ice storms do. Ice storms will pile up on their backs and it will just make them be bent for a long time. But this will not happen to a child. If a child climbs a birch tree and then brings it down to the switch, it will then go back to its same position. It will stand straight. But then here it's just fixed. It's all bent down. So he's just there's a conflict which is going, as if there's a stream of consciousness. There's a dual voice coming from his stream of consciousness. There's a conflict between his own thought, whether it's the ice storm which has done now. This is the place where it emerges. This is the place it emerges and wonderfully expresses it. This idea, there's a conflict between his imagination and the reality, the practical world. And this rationalization which is going on, he says, but swinging doesn't bend them down to stay as ice storms do. Often you must have seen them loaded with ice a sunny winter morning. Very often you must have noted, right? You must have seen these birds bent down, and you must have rather noticed them in the sunny winter morning when there is sun. The Phoebe has come up in the winter morning, and how these are still bent with the weight of load of ice on its back. So really this is something that comes to his mind. The reality might not lend itself to something which is interesting. The story, the imagination which is brewing in his mind, is something which is interesting. Whereas, but it doesn't lessen the beauty of the icy birches either. Have a glimpse. Then he says, the sunny winter morning after a rain, after a shower, they click upon as the breeze rises and turn many colored. What happens in the the moment you see that there is a little, the temperature has risen a little, the upper surface of the this particular ice which has been frozen there on the back of these trees which have bent them down starts becoming shimmery, and because there is a process of thaw which takes place, it starts glazing, glittering, and you must have seen them. This is the process of thawing in which the ice gets in a state of becoming vapor instead of becoming water first. So jumping from one state to the third state. So there is this sort of a glaze and a shimmery layer which gets settled. Then this is stored, and the moment there's a little breeze, there's some crackling sound. Very often you must have removed the tray from a fridge, and when you keep it outside and the temperature rises, the moment it rises its temperature, what happens is you will just hear that crackling sound. There's an effect which is getting embedded here. There's a figure of speech called onomatopoeia. The click upon themselves as the breeze rises, as the wind rises a little, there's a little breeze, there's a click sound, because there's the ice, frozen ice starts crackling inside, it starts bursting and turn many colored. And we see these birches there's some kind of a prism that you can see that the multicolored ray starts reflecting up when the sun rays fall on these ice, stacked ice, and that too which is melting, the reflection will produce a prism. So there's a multicolored, many colored rays which can be viewed a little, and the star cracks and creases their animal, and the upper layer of the ice starts melting, getting thawed. Soon the sun's warmth makes them shed crystal shells. Now what happens is sun's warmth turns these loaded, and the pile, the stack of ice turn into crystal shells, shattering and avalanching on the snow crust. And what is happening? Slipping. Slowly, it starts fragmenting itself because it's just getting crackled inside, and because of the rising temperature. And they shed crystal shells, shattering and avalanching. Avalanching is it starts slowly slipping down. There's again a beautiful comparison. Avalanching is a huge mass of ice which gets slips down from the mountain. Here, the metaphor of that avalanching of a huge piece of ice has been brought here in the microscopic level, and then this is something gives you the effect of metaphor here you can enjoy. So he compares that slipping of that softens the ice, and then it gets crackled, and then it avalanching, breaking the glass, and then what happens? Shattering the avalanche and avalanching on the snow crust, such heaps of broken glass to sweep away. And when it shatters down, it gets fragmented, it just broken into so many glass pieces to sweep away. And it's something sort of a, you could also imagine that these broken glass to sweep away can also be the broken realm of our inner world. Our inner world getting broken up because of the many ups and downs which an adult might face. So there is another comparison to these broken glass. You can have the metaphor addressed to it. You might think that probably also mean that the factual, his world, practical world has crashed into imaginary world. Now because he's getting lifted to, he's now moving to the imaginary world. Um, so there's this internal conflict. Realism makes him shed his daydreams, and reflections indicates the heap of broken glass. Uh, then there's sudden. You can also take it the other way. His imagination, which he's building up. That's the beautiful avalanching which is taking place, or the boy must have must have rode this birch tree, and then he must have bent it down. I might feel that there is this imagination which is taking me there on top of the birch tree, and now it's all my daydream or my fancy, my fantasy is broken into pieces. There's a beautiful connection here. Uh, Moving ahead, you see that you would think the inner dome of heaven had fallen. They are tracked to the withered bracken by the Lord. They're dragged to the withered bracken. Now, you would just think the inner dome of heaven had fallen. I just told you that the shattering of broken glass is his inner thought, his inner fancy is broken, and then he is back to his real world. Okay, this is not brought down by a child who's playing, but rather the ice storm which took place. And they are dragged to the withered bracken by the Lord. And now this birch tree has been bent down as if it has been brought down to the earth. It's rooted down, it's connected to the earth. And withered bracken, bracken are the ferns which grow close to the ground. Okay, so the birch tree, which is tapering high on the top of the tree, has been brought down near to the withered fern, the dried fern which grows close to the ground. That means that imagination, that heavenly experience is now brought back down to the earth, and they seem not to break. But then, while this is happening, the best thing is this birch tree doesn't break. It has the elasticity. It can move back freely to its position and then get back to this to the earth. So it's very grounded and rooted. They are dragged to the withered bracken by the load. Life can sometimes weigh heavy, and our creative selves forcing us closer to ground realities. The parallel is seen in the birch bent heavy by ice towards the withered bracken, a type of fern that grows at ground level, still bends so much. Now, the birches do not break, yet because they are bent for a long time, they are never quite the same. So, this happens, and then you may see so low for long they never right themselves. They have been bent for such a long time, it loses its elasticity and is not able to bring it back to the position. And the thing is, the fact the unhappiness and the reality, the grim realities of life sometimes bring make you so dull. You lose your happiness, you lose your fancy, and you don't want to get back to that heavenly experience. Okay, so he lacks, he wants, he's suppressing. Human beings sometimes, if you that elasticity is taken out of you, that childhood feeling is removed out of you, forget to go back to your original position. So there's a movement between the heavenly and the earthly experience. You will always see this conflict which is going on between the two things. There's a conflict between the truth and the imagination. There are two voices, as I told you earlier. There's a voice, the inner voice, which knows what is right, and the other voice which has a conflict which says, no, this is not true. There is some the ice storm which has brought this down, and the other voice which says, okay, this is brought down by by a boy who must be playful. The fancy which takes place in his mind, and also the other thing, which is the reality, the ice storm has brought this burst down. So the stream of consciousness in the thought, in the mind of the poet has been always seen to be conflicting between each other. So although he realizes, the truth is that the ice storm has brought it down. But there's always that attraction toward the fanciful thing. The earth and the heavenly. The earth, the tree is rooted to the ground. So this tells us that being rooted, being connected to the earth is very important. And the climbing of this birch tree is also equally important because there's in the upward upward thrust to the towards imagination. Concrete and the spirit. What is his spirit is fanciful. He wants to, which is luring itself to the heavenly things, whereas the concrete world is associated to the ground reality. The ground is a place which is also having some consideration, some responsibilities, and he rejects this self-delusional extreme of imagination. So low for long they never right themselves. If you bring that fancy out of your life of experiencing that heavenly bliss, you will forget to move back to the original situation and you remain bent. Such a beautiful comparison. You may see their trunk arching in the woods years afterwards, trailing their leaves on the ground like curls on hands and knees that throw their hair. Yet another beautiful comparison. You may see their trunks arching in the woods. You might see there they are arching. There's a arch made by the birch trees in the woods, which is compared to the girls which have when they dry their hair in the sun, they throw their hair on their on hands and knees to dry them up before them over their heads to dry in the sun. But I was going to say, when truth broken, with all her matter of fact about the ice storm, yeah, I will just end here for this video. The remaining part of the poetry I will explain in the other video. Thank you for watching. Please continue the part 2 video also for the birches.